It's the art of action figures, taking a look at the April 2024 premium Bandai exclusive for the Dragon Ball SH Figuarts line, Mecha Frieza. Now, I'm a bit late to the party on this figure, and that's for a couple of reasons. First of all, I ordered Mecha Frieza here from Japan, and if you don't know, for the most part, stores in Japan like Hobby Genki will get these releases usually a couple of weeks after premium Bandai has shipped them out to people who ordered them in the US. Something a little bit goofy about these premium Bandai releases is it's usually less expensive to import a single copy of this figure for yourself from Japan than it is to buy it through premium Bandai. The other reason this is delayed is I've been dragging my feet a little bit. I don't know what it is exactly. Maybe it just isn't the most exciting release. I skipped over Yamcha, Earth's midmost fighter, entirely. Is it really necessary to have this form when it's in one episode? You know, third form is not around for much longer, and I like this design a heck of a lot more than third form. I do really look forward to digging into the aesthetic details, and I think I'm going to spend the bulk of the review going over those because I think a lot of the attention was spent designing this figure on getting all those mechanical bits just right, and I love it. Now, if you want to see how future Trunks looks, slashing Mecha Frieza in half, I have covered this pose plus the finishing Ki Blast pose in great detail in my reissue Boy from the Future Trunks review. So go check that one out to learn all the ins and outs of posing this Trunks. We're going to mostly focus on Frieza in this video. Now, to start with, the package is pretty standard dimensions. It's a little bit deeper than, say, standard issue SH Figuarts box for Dragon Ball. This is the Boy from the Future, which is kind of a good baseline. I've also got the fourth form Frieza budget release, which we'll be comparing this figure to. Gotta say, one of the best 1.0 figures that still holds up really well. And this budget release is probably the best bang for your buck SH Figuarts you can get. I think he's got a reissue coming out soon, so if you have been on the market for this figure, he's gotten scooped up a couple of times. Look out for that reissue. Phenomenal figure. But you can see Mecha Frieza, the box is just a little bit deeper, probably to accommodate his big head, which we'll talk about. But height-wise and width-wise, about the same as standard box. On the front of the box, across the bottom, we have all of your standard branding and authenticity stickers and consumer safety information, Bandai, Tamashii Nations, Dragon Ball Z, Toei Animation holographic sticker, Tamashii Nations quality holographic sticker, both of which let you know this is authentic. Warning, choking hazard, small parts, not for children under 3 years, intended for ages 15 and up. Designed by Tamashii Nations in Japan, Bandai Spirits, made in Vietnam. We have a nice cutout window here where you can see the figure and the 3 alternate heads. SH Figuarts Mecha Frieza is printed in white along the window. The cutout follows the outline of this product photo. Accent color here is this beautiful lavender, and once again, I am a bit stumped where they've taken this color from. Maybe it's just a very desaturated version of the purple on his armor bits. It blends in really well with the existing because it fits perfectly next to its sort of chronological predecessor, fourth form Frieza, which has just a slightly deeper shade of lavender. While we're here, let's take a look at the right-hand side. We've got the Mecha arm at the top, the gritting teeth, grimace face in the middle, and the Mecha foot and tail at the bottom. Along the bottom of the box, we have name of the figure, Mecha Frieza, and the gritting teeth smiling with extreme happiness face. Left side, just window. Top, pretty much just window. A little bit of continuation of the shouting pose. Okay, and finally, on the back, we have all of your promotional photos and Bandai Spirit's distribution information along the bottom. Interesting, they do not show any photos of the special hidden accessory that lies secretly behind here in the package, but I think we all know what that's going to be. That's it for the packaging. Let's go ahead and unbox Mecha Frieza. Now, if you're new here, welcome. If not, welcome back. I've got my trusty hobby knife here, and I've already used it to slice the tape down the right-hand side, and I'm just going to do my special no wrinkling the flap trick, where I gently push the blade towards the back of the box with the dull edge and pull out to release the flap with very limited to no wrinkling. Some interesting instructions here showing you how to swap the arms, legs, and tail onto this alternate interchangeable body part. Please display it like this. Beautiful lavender throughout the box. I just love that color. And let's go ahead and set that aside and take a look at these trays. We have 2 layers of tray here. The back is pretty simple. This is just the base for the acrylic stand that's used for the interchangeable body. Mecha Frieza comes with 4 alternate heads, each with a different expression. We have smirking, looking straight ahead, grimacing, looking straight ahead, evil laughing face looking slightly downward. I think this is for his like death ball. And finally, a very expressive shouting face. I love the sort of asymmetry of the eyes on this one, which we'll take a closer look at once we get him out. He has 4 pairs of hands, including the fists by default, 2 death ball, death beam, pointing finger hands, 2 open clenched finger hands, and 2 open splayed finger hands. And of course, each of the hands matches the deco on either arm. The left arm, of course, is this cybernetic one, since Frieza famously sliced off his own left arm like a fool. He has his silver cybernetic tail, the acrylic stand to go along with the base, and finally, cleanly sliced down the middle alternate torso. Just brilliant. I think this is probably a piece a sculptor had a lot of fun just like doing a big planar cut through the whole model and offsetting it a little bit. Fantastic. Just like a beautiful effect. I know I had kind of mixed feelings about it. Seeing it, I was like, is that really necessary? Wouldn't a statue just be better for that? But seeing it in person and just how well executed it is, I've kind of come around, and I can't really think of what else would have been better to include with Mecha Frieza. He pretty much shows up, gets sliced in half, and we're done. So I think this is a very, very fine spread of accessories. I really can't think of anything other than maybe a slightly more like horrified looking face. Let's go ahead and pull him out of the package. I love the like sci-fi aesthetics in Dragon Ball. I love the beginning of the Android saga. I had the VHS that had like the first few episodes of that arc. Going ahead and setting him up fully, let's go ahead and get his tail attached. It has a swivel hinge that acts as a peg going into this base at the back of the waist piece. And I've noticed it can be a little bit tricky to peg this in. It's a little bit of a tight fit. And for a part that does need swapped out to use the alternate body accessory, I would have liked to see this be a little bit more effortless. As it is, it's a little bit scary just given the thinness of the tail and the overall just kind of delicate painted nature of this figure. You don't want to have to put scary force on him. But unfortunately, that's kind of what it takes, it seems, to get this tail attached. I think that's... Nope. And we're going to try again off camera to get quote Robo behind the camera strength. And I think I've got it. Now, looking at Mecha Frieza's details up close, let's just take a moment to appreciate just how much sharp mechanical paint went into creating this form. Beautiful, yeah, exquisite details on this figure. Just really, really sharp. Before we get into all the cybernetic details, I do want to take a moment to compare the Mecha Frieza figure to 4th form Frieza. There's been some pretty fair criticism of Mecha Frieza not really matching the sculpt proportions of this 4th form Frieza. Granted, this is one of the oldest figures in the Figuarts line. They may yet update 4th form Frieza on a body more similar to Mecha Frieza, at which point this criticism kind of goes away. But I do think it's fair that people would want these two figures to look a little bit more similar. The head sizes and the sort of width of the upper body are really the points that stand out most. His lower body's completely different, so that's hardly a point that needed to stay the same. Just the overall size and shape of his head, it's just a little bit larger and rounder on Mecha Frieza. His shoulders are a bit wider, as is his chest. The abdomen's fairly similar, but a little bit of a different sculpt. His little armor shield in the center is again just slightly different shape. The purple is not metallic on Mecha Frieza, which is a little unusual, although more consistent with the other forms like 1st, 2nd, and 3rd form Frieza. The arms are totally different, just much bulkier, longer even for Mecha Frieza. And something I'm not 100% sure about, the back of this forearm sort of gauntlet armor is now ribbed, which I don't remember it being that way, but maybe it is once he's in this mecha form, but it's not in 4th form. His little ear vent is a different diameter there. You can see in profile especially how much bigger Mecha Frieza's head is than 4th form. I'm not really sure why that was done, but looking at some reference drawings from the manga, the width of his head really does match up pretty well. If you compare like the widest point at these ears to the shoulders, they pretty much cross like just inside the shoulder joint, just outside the shoulder joint here, which is about right. But then maybe that goes back to, okay, well, his shoulders are just a little bit wide. Maybe that threw the head proportions off a little bit, trying to match to a reference drawing. I'm not sure. It doesn't look too bad on camera, but it does stick out to me a little bit in person that his head could be a bit smaller. And I'm just going to try something really quickly. I'm curious. Well, I think that ball joint is a different size from 4th form Frieza, so we're not going to have a direct swap, but I do want to see just what this head looks like proportions-wise, given the right height, I think it would have looked a little bit better. He looks a little more intimidating with a more proportionate head. I think the large head makes him just look a little bit goofy, so it's not like a deal breaker for me. Obviously, I still want this form. I wanted to get this figure, but I don't know. I wish that somebody had done kind of a double take on that, because I certainly did when I saw it. I think it's probably another reason why I was maybe not the most excited for this release this year, but it is still a very, very nice. Now, getting his head back on is going to be a trick. There we go. A few more points of comparison to make with fourth form. I think the biggest improvement that they have made this time around is the shoulders. On the fourth form figure, they famously kind of had two bad options. The original release had these swivel hinge joints done in sort of the grayish white of his skin tone, which looked very bad on the top of the shoulders going into this purple armor piece. The second and third releases of fourth form Frieza had instead purple swivel hinges, which I think is probably the better of the two options, just because this blends a little bit better at the top of that armor piece. Not totally seamless, but certainly doesn't stick out as much as gray. However, then you have kind of this hard line of the purple in that socket, which can kind of make the arms look a little disconnected from the body, especially if he's got his arms raised up, and then of course underneath the arm you have a pretty unsightly dark purple joint. Not the biggest aesthetic area of concern. This Mecha Frieza has got a pretty clever solution to that. They've taken a page from characters with like shoulder armor and put these caps on little hinges, which just cover up the shoulder joint, but allow you to raise the arm without them getting in the way. And it works a little better probably on this left mechanical arm because of, one, the black tends to hide the seam better than the white. You can see that shadow in there a lot more than you can in there. Also, this is a mechanical arm, whereas this is an organic arm, and so that cut there just looks all the more conspicuous. But it's definitely, I think, a more elegant solution and looks really good from most angles. This, of course, allows them to make that swivel hinge gray and black accordingly. No weird armpit colors, no weird shoulder pad colors over the top, and not completely seamless, but pretty good nonetheless. This shoulder design is very similar to how Figuarts does their like Mandalorian figures, and honestly the figure in the Dragon Ball line that this most reminds me of is actually the Imperfect Cell. He has pretty much the same style hinge on his shoulder armor. He also has very similar hips. Both of these figures have kind of covered drop ball pegs. The drop down hips really just help to move the leg past the very specific codpiece and thigh armor. He has two scars, one on his forehead here and one on his chest. They maybe could have put a little bit of darker paint in those scars to bring them out, but for me personally, figures are not just like I need 100% detail all across the board. there's a balance to be struck. This figure has so much going on visually. Adding one more, like, visually noisy element might hurt the overall aesthetic of this figure more than it helps it, even though technically it maybe ought to be there. I think it actually looks really nice as it is. They've filled in his little ear sockets. The line along his cheekbone up to his eye is very clean on that side. His lips are luscious and sinister looking. The sort of patchwork right side of his face is interesting. There's this sort of black band layer, seems pressed under these metal plates, which have lots of great little corrugated segments and rivets and overlapping layers. These beautiful turquoise spheres. I'm assuming these are some kind of ports where you like plug them in for maintenance, I guess. Really, really love this rivet metal plate along the back of his skull, and then up over the top back to this black headband, which is this beautiful, beautiful matte black finish. More corrugated bits along the top, and then on the left side of his head he has this brown sort of pad with a silver rim with silver trim. Silver paint is just vibrant and metallic and looks fantastic. His red little eyes there look really good. The black on this mask piece maybe missed a little bit on the edge over his nose there, but it's pretty forgivable and doesn't really stand out. Down through the body, you have those motifs continued. More of these turquoise ports on his right chest. More corrugated metal along the rib cage, bolted onto his back. And then kind of matte black sleeve for his left arm. Another brown cushion looking pad with silver trim for the shoulder, the bicep, and that sort of ties together the black sleeve with the metallic triceps and forearm pieces. The elbow joint is gray with just a slight metallic sheen to it, but doesn't match perfectly the metallic sheen of the forearm. Still pretty cohesive though. Great shape to these gauntlets. Love that elbow spike. Really sort of dramatic tapering. Looks powerful. They give him mechanical fingernails. It looks like they might have. That's a little odd. But it does have some lines separating the knuckles. Then along his right arm, the non-mechanical, the organic arm, I've got a little imperfection on the purple paint right there on the shoulder. Maybe another one at the top there. Just a little bit of a sheen on the purple, but not quite as metallic as fourth form. It does match the little shield armor shape at the diaphragm here. This is on some sort of little joint, maybe a small ball joint, and it does have a pretty apparent seam up the middle, which seems a little odd. I'm not sure that's supposed to be that way. The one on the shoulder is there, but it's a little less apparent. It helps that it's not smack dab in the center like this one. And then his right forearm gauntlet has, again, a really nice shape. It's a different sculpt, but similar to the metallic mechanical one. Evil black fingernails painted on. And I do want to try something before I get going on hand swaps. This is the right hand from 4th Form Frieza, and it fits on here perfectly. At least for his right hand, that gives you a relaxed hand and like a casual pointing finger hand. I think that's like more of a death beam hand than a death ball. So that's pretty cool. A little bit of extra utility, and that really just is a perfect fit. One of the more intriguing elements of this design is the way that the waist line kind of kinks up in the middle. And that is accurate to the way this costume Frieza is designed. The black side here is just ever so slightly taller than the metallic side, but matte black with the silver metallic trim is a really good look. The rivets continue around here. Little codpiece pad matches the pads on his thighs. More corrugated metal behind the thigh armor. His thigh armor is really nicely sculpted. Again, kind of a powerful silhouette. More rivets, more metallic, down to the toes. And these feet have lines around the knuckles. And finally, around the back, his evil tail. Is interesting. It's in 2 parts, I guess 3 if you count the piece that's attached to the waist. I always wonder why they don't just continue to make these tail pieces the way that they did 4th Form Frieza. It plugs in to this flat port at the back of his waist, which gives you the ability to have the tail going up out of his backside, which is something you often want to do with a character that has a tail. So I don't know why they're so committed to the tail going down only, but that seems to be the way of things lately. Another example is the metal cooler. You can see on Mecha Frieza, the tail plugs into this port, and the port is already angled down, so if you wanted his tail angled up, you're kind of working against that now, and it just looks a little odd. It's kinked, it's upside down. Yeah, I mean, the sculpt of the tail is good. The articulation leaves a lot to be desired and maybe isn't necessary. I think the original 4th Form Frieza with just one sort of relaxed tail and then another specific tail for like wrapping around a character's neck or flying. If you wanted to straighten out this tail like he's flying forward, you kind of have to first get that middle piece offset like this so that it's going down, and then this piece you kind of have to invert, which doesn't feel super safe, and it just looks a little odd. Certainly not ideal, but it works all right. It's just not the most comfy thing to articulate, especially with that nice silver metallic paint job on there. And the joints are just kind of tight against each other, like there's not a whole lot of room on there. You can hinge up and down here pretty comfortably. And of course you can swivel it so that it hinges around this way. And vice versa, if you go down. But this hinge, I mean, it's really buried in there. And so it doesn't give you a lot of hinge movement. And swiveling it feels a bit scary, like I'm going to scratch the paint along the corners of this lower tail piece. It is a very Very solid feeling, sturdy, stable, smooth, nothing squeaky, nothing too tight or loose out of the box. Everything is really buttery smooth. Feature, however, it's not a problem. These little covers over the drop-down ball hinge hips have a tendency to rattle. It sounds like something's wrong with it. It isn't. It's fine. Interesting note on the knees. They've put like ribs into the upper part of the knee joint, but not the lower. He's got kneecaps with metallic paint. Knees from the back. A little bit of scooping going on at the back of the legs, but not very noticeable, and they've actually done a pretty good job hiding it from the sides. That just gives you a little bit of extra room to bend his knees. But yeah, overall, just an aesthetically wonderful figure. Minor gripes. The head size, I think, could have been scaled down just a hair. In fact, maybe I'll do a mock-up here like this. The head is on a ball hinge swivel combo joint into the neck, and then the neck is into the torso on just a single ball joint. Altogether, he looks up maybe 30 degrees, which is not a ton. Down works very well, though. He can look down 70 degrees. And because the head's on that sort of hinge, he doesn't get the maximum amount of tilt by default, but it's pretty good. And if you turn the hinge around, which it's easiest to just take the head off and do, you don't risk pushing anything in the wrong direction when you do it that way. So to attach the head as well. And yeah, when you do that, I mean, you get the full range, easily 45 degrees there. Works all right. I would like to see a little bit more range looking up. Elbows are double hinges, and because of the asymmetry on here, we're going to look at each of them individually. Just past 90 degrees on the right at the wrist, swivel, hinge, swivel, combo joint, standard for Figuarts, goes in and out, up and down. The left arm, again, double hinge for the elbow. Really not much more than 90 on either side, and they're about even, to be honest. So torso is, let's see, it feels like on at least 2 ball joints, maybe 3. Tilting back, he does really well. That's a good 45 degrees tilting back. With the head tilting almost straight vertically. Easily looks inside his foot line. Ab crunch forward's only about 30 degrees though, but the neck makes up for the rest of the way. It's always interesting to see how different parts of the figure prioritize leaning forwards versus leaning backwards. I almost would have preferred the opposite, a little more ab crunch forward, a little less head tilt forward, maybe a little more head tilt backward. His heads have these little like detail panels that have to be swapped between each of the alternate heads, and they're only pressure fit onto the figure. And it's just really not the most secure fit. It's fallen out twice so far while just showing the articulation. I really wouldn't try to kick the leg forward without the drop down, or you might scratch the paint on the thigh there against the waist. But it's pretty safely about 90 degrees, maybe a bit less. I don't want to push it more than that, personally. and kicking back just a bit. And of course the tail we talked about, hinge up and down. The knees, double hinges, and they get a ton of range. Very easily 135, really good. And then the feet, the ankles are swivel hinge swivels, and they actually work really well. That's 30 degrees up, past like 60, 70 degrees down. We'll talk about ankle rocker as we go. Let's talk about his side to sides. The shoulders get up and out of the way. They're on little double hinge combo joints, or maybe, yeah, little double hinge combo joints with maybe a ball or a swivel connecting to the pad. So he can raise his arms pretty high. They do look a little strange. T-pose, though, looks pretty natural. All right, tilting in the torso. Maybe a little bit less this way because of the way the waist raises up on that side. Not a lot of tilt happening at that top joint. So altogether, 30 degrees or so, and then going the other way, maybe 45. Kicking out to the sides, probably going to work better with the drop. That's without, and then add the drop, and not a lot better, but a little bit. About 45 each way, 90 degrees total. Thigh swivels work pretty well, and they're actually on a ball joint, which gives you a little extra tilt there. That's kind of cool. Ankle pivot is just on that lower swivel. It's pretty steep, but if you use the upper swivel in combination, let's see if it levels out. Not really. It kind of runs into this sculpt of his boot, and there's a little rivet there where I feel like they could have just put the pin for the ankle hinge. Like, it's so close. I don't know why. Widest stance with his feet flat is about there. Finally, the shoulders are on kind of a forward hinge 2.0 style butterfly joint, and it's not the best. They don't get out very far, and the chest just isn't cut away enough there to let them move past, and so he's going to struggle to actually just cross his hands. Yeah, he can only bring his arms out about that far. Because it's a forward hinge, across the back isn't going to happen. They can go straight up pretty much, and even inside that, if his head looks down, the forearms have kind of a gauntlet swivel as well. So if you wanted that armor on the side for whatever reason, you can have it do that. He balances pretty well. The tail is fairly light, and so he is able to stand pretty straight up and down despite that weight coming off his back. His ankles are nice and sturdy as well, and so that really helps. I feel like his proportions are a little weird. His arms look a little long, and his head just really looks too big to me. Alright, we already saw pretty similar height to fourth form, the cybernetic bros. And how about just a standard 2.0 Goku? We have full power Super Saiyan here. Swapping his heads is a little bit tricky because of that ball hinge neck design. There is kind of that famous tendency of this style of joint to like pop back or forth as you are trying to apply pressure to attach his head. As far as attaching parts, there's another concern I have, which is just how much nice shiny paint there is on this figure. Applying pressure is just kind of risking pushing some of those painted parts up against each other more than they should, and scratching it. Let's take his evil laughing head. You can see it's missing the brown pad and blue ports, so you've got to take those from the default head, and they're simply pressure fit and not the tightest fit, if I'm honest. Let's see if it's any tighter on this head. Actually, yes, that's a good bit tighter on that. Just line up that 7 there. There we go. So this face, I think, is specifically when he's about to throw his giant death ball onto Trunks and planet Earth along with him, and Trunks just lifts it up like nothing. I think really a good, like, scared reaction face is the one thing missing from this figure as far as accessories. Get his hip swing forward, his feet pointing down. Right there. That looks pretty cool. Next, I think we'll try his shouting face and his blast hands. And we'll try to do his sort of two-handed forward blast. That's a tight fit on his neck there. Get these little mechanical bits. I don't necessarily love having to swap those each time, but it's not the biggest, most important. That one went on a bit more easily. I love the asymmetric eyes. Asymmetric eyes just give him this unhinged look. That is great. Really well sculpted hand. Has some nice black paint on the fingernails. Clenched fingers, open left hand. This one's a little bit tougher to attach here. Oh, it's not too bad. And what I was hoping he could do is put his hands together out in front of his body, but I don't think that's going to quite work out. Also, I can see there's a little bit of scratch marks on his forehead there, which I didn't put on this figure. Give him this sort of fadeaway key blast, using the tail just to prop him up a bit. Straighten this leg. Let's really exaggerate it here. Balancing on his toes and his tail there. You can really get him falling back. Let's have him look up a little bit more. There we go. I just want to show a quick close-up of his cybernetic hand here. This open one, since we couldn't really see the open palm. The little lines going through the knuckles and the palm. That looks really good. Let's try his grimacing, gritting his teeth. For whatever reason, that shouting face is the only one I've had with scratches on it. Another great, strained, grimacing head sculpt here. Nice lines around the mouth. Sharp angle at the brow, the top of the nose. You can tell the nose is kind of scrunched up as he's angry. The eyes are also a bit sharper across the bottom compared to his more relaxed face here. You can see the difference in the nose, the outline around the mouth, the shape of his eyes. But we all know how this ends, so let's go ahead and take a look at his last accessory. Little display stand comes in two pieces. There's an arm and a base for it. The arm has a ball that plugs into the base. Alright, I think that's in there. And then the top of the arm is just a straight peg that plugs into the back of this alternate body. Like that. They did a really good job with this. Paint is pretty much equally as good. The little blemishes, I'm noticing a little bit of missing blue on this back port. The whole thing feels pretty solid, balanced, I guess. And yeah, check out my Future Trunks Boy from the Future review. And you can see the posing counterpart there. To complete the look, we've got to borrow some parts from the main body. Actually, let's begin with the tail. Okay, that comes out pretty easily. Let's see how easily it pegs into the back of the split model here. We're going to take him off the stand. I think that'll give us a better, more stable grip on him. That goes in pretty well. Next, let's go ahead and remove the legs. So you just want to pull them off at the thigh swivel, and they come out pretty easily. And let's see how easily they peg on. Oh, that's effortless. Great. They can still swivel on there, but they don't tilt as much. And of course, you still have the knee articulation. And finally, the arms. You can pop them out at the bicep shoulder joint. I was afraid that would happen, so I tried to pop the right arm off, and the whole thing's come out of the shoulder. So the hard part is you can't really grab and pull on this shoulder pad. Yeah, I guess you can. Alright, that's not too bad. And then I guess if that happens, you can pop this back in. Left arm, that comes off more easily. That right arm isn't very seamless looking. I'm not sure if it's supposed to be at a particular angle to look best, but oh yeah, I think it's supposed to be angled down a little. And there you have him. Some limited articulation when Frieza's on. this stand. Kind of weird. I think it would have been cool if they had just made this a fixed piece. It honestly could have been a Figuarts Zero. I think they did make a Figuarts Zero of this particular Trunks slicing Frieza in half sequence, so I don't know why they didn't just say, yeah, go buy that if you want this specific thing, but that looks really weird. Alright, and to put everything back on to the main figure, pop the arms off. I probably won't be using that again personally, but I know some people are really happy that they included it, so it's cool for what it is. I don't love disassembling the figure to recreate it though, so let's go ahead and put Humpty back together, and then we'll wrap things up. That arm goes on pretty easily. This is a nice bicep joint. It's not attached to the shoulder hinge, and so pushing the arm on doesn't just like push the peg into the socket to the point where it won't connect, which is a problem for that style joint. Did I scuff the purple? Oh my goodness, I scuffed the purple just trying to take that arm off. Okay, and putting him back into his default look. My closing thoughts. It's a good figure for what they had to work with, which is not much for this mecha form Frieza. Some of the articulation could have been better, like the shoulders and the elbows and the neck. But the real highlight of this figure, for sure, is the sculpt and paint. It's just like nothing else in the line. And really, really good looking. Imposing little monster of a figure here. The tail could be a little bit easier to swap. I don't know why they made it so hard for it to peg in. It really didn't need to be so hard to swap. Like, look how easy this is. It doesn't fall out, but there's a good pressure fit. What was wrong with that? I don't love the sliced in half effect. It's cool. I know a lot of people really were excited about it. I personally am probably never going to use it, and I'm kind of pissed off at it right now because I scuffed the purple paint on his shoulder trying to remove this right arm. So we're going to let that cool down a little bit. Go check out my Future Trunks review. You can see both kind of all the fixes that they made on the reissue of that figure, as well as the sort of key poses from his fight with Mecha Frieza. Yeah, those are my thoughts on Mecha Frieza from the Dragon Ball SH Figuarts line. I hope you've enjoyed. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.